Hey guys, Useful Yields here. Today we're going to be going over the portfolio for the week. And so to start off, we can take a look here at the S&P 500 1 week performance. So you can see here that most of the sectors here are red. There are a few that did decently well, such as healthcare did pretty well, a little bit of consumer staples, but overall pretty red. And we can see that further just in one collapsed number here. So we can see in the last 7 days that SPY is down almost 2%, whereas our portfolio is actually only down about half of that, which is super cool. Now, to give you a little bit of preface into my next point, my M1 Finance portfolio is around $25,600, whereas my Composer portfolio is $8,500, and uh, the Webull portfolio is about $600. So you might be asking, okay, your M1 Finance portfolio is majority of your money, which is true. Your Composer portfolio has like a little bit, but it's not as much as Composer. So this 1.87% mixed with this, like if you take the weights, you would assume, okay, yeah, maybe he's not doing as bad as 1.87%, but there's no way he would be down that or only down that much. And that, my friends, is why hedging is really good because, and you'll see this on the other stats as well, where this is up 0.3%. This is even more clearer picture. This is up 0.3%. Composer's down 0.67 or 0.63%, but our portfolio as a whole is actually up 1% for 30 days. And that is because these are not highly correlated streams of, I guess, they're not highly correlated portfolios. And so sometimes the Composer portfolio might actually go in a position that gains money while the M1 Finance portfolio doesn't, right? And that's why I brought up the hedging. I say sometimes because it's not like I'm holding inverse funds. It's just sometimes that we're holding a hedge position for maybe 1 or 2 days. So that's why I like this algorithmic approach because we are able to capture a lot of those protections. I'm still trying to figure it out, obviously, but it's getting better and better every the longer I go. So, but moving into the actual meat and potatoes, real quick, actually, before I forget, you can see here that we've actually finally surpassed. It was a while ago at this point, but um, we've actually surpassed the S&P 500 in terms of growth on our portfolio. So you can see here that if we had 10K, and this is on the chart as well, it's just easier to see because the chart's so big. And Google, from my expertise on Google Sheets, is not amazing. So getting this chart to actually only go, for example, with these dates is extremely difficult, but you have to use like AppScript or something. Anyways, if you look at the 10,000 value, which basically assumes that from May 19th of this year, we started with 10K, and using the daily value, the daily change percent, you can actually determine how much you would have if you had just started with 10K in that position. This gives us a really easy apples to apples comparison because, again, we have, let's say, 34,000 in this portfolio as a whole, but on the Composer just alone, we have the same column, but we only have 8,000. So it's really easy to see. My point is, we're actually past the S&P 500, which means we're actually doing better performance. And that's also easier to see, I'd probably say, on this chart here to the right. So you can see on the chart portfolio, we're actually about 12%, whereas the S&P 500 is about 10.5%, which is super cool. You can see a lot of that loss has come from the November. I mean, this is the biggest loss for the SPY portfolio so far. Now, we do have another week or so. Yeah, almost exactly a week until November's done. Um, so, there's still some movement that could happen, but it's just interesting. You can see this is down 3.37% in November, where our portfolio is only down 0.61%. And you can also, I can go ahead and do this. You can see how that does and versus the M1 Finance portfolio. So you can see our M1 Finance portfolio is still actually doing better than the SPY portfolio. So that's nice. We picked some good stocks in there, but not, it's not like we're invulnerable to a market crash or market regime change. We could totally get wrecked in our portfolio because, relatively speaking, it's pretty undiversified. So, anyways, I'm gonna actually go into M1 Finance portfolio real quick and get into it. So, for the last week, we are up. I'm sorry, we're down. And I also finally figured out how to get this Souls thing. They didn't make it very nice to do this. I wish there was just a sell button rather than it having that little badge up there. It says like, oh, you need to add this to your portfolio. Because what I had to do is I had to add it through that way. There was another way you could do it, but that didn't work to add something to your portfolio. But I had to add it through that alert, that notification, and then I set it because it's expecting a wait. I set it to 1%, and this is after the market was closed, for example. But then I go in using the edit button, and I now take that 1% out and put the balanced growth portfolio at 100%. That signals M1 Finance for a buy. So, for example, on Monday, we'll have a buy of NVIDIA and AVGO and a sell of this Souls company. I really just don't see it in there. So Honeywell's really where it comes in, not this Solus Advanced Materials. But yeah, we're down 1.81%. If we go in here, consumer staples is up the most, where the most is coming from Coca-Cola. Then we have healthcare. The most there is from Eli Lilly. And we have technology. The most there is from Google. Awesome. They're actually an anomaly in this for us. You can see Microsoft's down 7% at the same time. So, semiconductors, on the other hand, AMD is down a whopping 17%. That's crazy. We have consumer discretionary, where Amazon is down almost 6%, and last but not least, energy, where the biggest loser there was Chevron. Moving into whether or not we had dividends. So the 16th, we had one dividend since then, which would have been Procter & Gamble. There's more to come in November, and I can show that in a second, but we're still up 14%, which is still really good. Our biggest holding, or AMD, is our largest gain. Still, even despite that 17% drop, it's up 85% in our portfolio, which is super nice. We have some other ones here. We have AMT, Costco, and Home Depot. I'm ignoring Souls. And those are down, quite a bit, but I think this is still around about 10 stocks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep. 10 stocks out of our 30 are down. So that's fine. And a lot of this could come down to really just the sector, right? So you can see MasterCard, Visa, for example, Home Depot, Costco, for example. It really just comes down to that. Energy company. Yeah. Anyhow, let's see. Dividend income, like I said, I think we're going to be expecting a lot more in December. So I think we've probably earned all that we're going to, is what it said. Yeah. But it's expecting us to have around $53 in dividends, which is super cool. Reminder, this is not a dividend portfolio anymore like it was when we were doing these more volatile funds. We had, like $200 months, but I don't really need the dividends or the income, so it just doesn't logically make sense for me to be in those, and as well as they're all pretty crazy and risky. So, moving on, the Composer portfolio. So I was in a couple different ones this week, so I decided to go back to that BF one. Like I said, I sold out of the bonds one that I was about 50-50 in. And the reason why is because, and the one I'm talking about here is like something like this, where it's just an RSI sort and um, has this small front runner. That's what the FR stands for, where it checks if it's oversold, for example. The problem is most of the time, like this is not the case, so it goes straight to the sort. And the issue is that because you have a 10 to 15 minute window before it trades, very, very often were these results different from the backtest, which is not good. So that's the whole point of that tool, IC Stats. So I sold out of that, went mostly into the BF1, which is the one I know that does decent enough and is close enough to the backtest. And I went into some other ones because I still want to test a lot. So, yeah, I think I did that. Like I had put into these on Thursday at the close, which means I only got 1 day of performance, which was Friday. But you can see that Friday was a decent day here. So we are up a little bit on these. These are like the two staple portfolios in the community. The only issue with them is they're very high risk. You have a lot of max drawdown and volatility. So I come over here and go to like the last. Well, I'll just do like year to date, for example. Year to date, you have a 48% drop, and a standard deviation 73. But you're up 49%. And the nice thing is the logic's really simple. As you can see here, it's pretty simple. Just does a few overbought, oversold checks. Same thing. These strategies are mostly the same, but same thing is true here. So 35% down for the year, but 91% up for that year, which is pretty cool. And then there's some other ones here. For example, I'll show you the max drawdown as the entire portfolio. So since 2011, it's actually only gone down 25%. Now that's a lot more than I typically do. The thing is that this is actually pretty good. And really I need to just come to my senses. Now this one's a little bit more involved. It does a lot of checks on whether or not some sectors or ETFs are oversold, overbought, and then does adjustments on that. And yeah, most of this actually is just repeated logic because you can see that what it typically does is it weights the index ETFs. So you can see SPY, QQQ, IWM, and DIA. And then what it does is it basically just tracks those and determines whether or not it can go into leverage products of those. So this one for the year, for example, is only down 24% and is up 54%. Or that's the annualized. I'm sorry, it's up about 50%. So really close to the TQQ for long run, which is really what made this platform take off, is because someone posted on the Reddit, on the LETFs Reddit, and a lot of people joined the platform because of that. I have a few other ones, which is I think I've tested before, these last two, but realistically they are really good. So if I just don't remember whether or not they performed that well. So you can see here from year to date, this one's only down 7%, 7.6%. It's up 36%. And then Reigns Concise is probably way better than that, where it's 8% and up 40%. So then you have Simple QQQ Lever, which is something I made. It's even simpler. And it has this basically just check the 14-day RSI to check if it's oversold. And if it is, by TQQQ. If it is overbought, then it goes into QID, which is a minus 2x. So it's like a inverse 2x fund on QQQ. You could take SQQQ here, but I found that is a bit too aggressive. So sometimes sometimes you hit that 70 RSI and it just isn't ready. So, and then if it's not overbought or oversold, it goes into just QQQ. So you can see that did 51% for 21 minus drawdown. So it's super nice. This one goes back to 2011 as well, or sorry, 2010. with 27% annualized return with 33% max drawdown. So it's not like groundbreaking logic, but since OOS, since I created this, you can see it's done decently well compared to SPY. So yeah, testing a lot of things. Most of the things here I'm just testing in terms of how far they deviate from their backtest. And again, the main reason for that is determining whether or not they're actually worth pursuing, because a lot of these could pay high numbers because, for example, Holy Grail is, around an annualized return of 162. TQQQ is an annualized return of 174. It's just run FTLT, for example. Why do we not have? Oh, my bad. Here's what I'll do. I will put these into a new window real quick. I'll just do the ones that I'm most interested in, but it's a bit silly the way they do this, but anyhow. So you can see that TQQQ for the long run is annualized around 174, which is pretty cool. You can see that Holy Grail. Let me look at the Sharp actually. Let's compare that. So the Sharp on TQQ FTLT is 190 or 1.9. On Holy Grail, it's 1.84, so really close. On this just run FTLT is 90 or 1.9. The thing is, if you compare these two, like in terms of risk that you're taking on for this, I would say it's definitely worth it over the TQQQ one personally. And then you can see this one's 62, but it has a 3.14, so it's good. And this also goes back to 2007, where most of these go back to just 2011, because that's when TQQQ was like basically created. So, and a lot of the leverage projects that is. But anyhow, all this to say, I'm testing a lot this week. These are only $50 each in the portfolio, so their percentage of the portfolio is extremely small, in comparison. So I will be testing those, and what I might eventually end up doing is basically maybe taking this as the majority of the portfolio, or one of the, like, let's say this one, just a low risk. And this is the reason why I'll show in this one as well. So if I go back to max, this one has this one also goes back to 2007, but has a 2.75 Sharp, so it's similar to this Reigns Concise one. But what I might end up doing is taking one of those low risk ones, have them as my main symphony in the portfolio, and then maybe have one or two high risk, high reward ones such as TQQQ, Holy Grail, or just run this FTLT. So who knows? Still looking into that, obviously. The main thing I care about on this platform is whether or not I can find stuff that is really close to the back test. Because again, I mentioned this a million times before. If it doesn't match the back test, it means it's almost completely useless. Because essentially what that means is you can't trust the back test, and those numbers almost mean nothing, because some days your back test goes down and yours goes up. Sometimes it's the other way around, and sometimes they match very closely for the day. So it's unpredictable. So anyhow, that is it from the portfolio, the Composer portfolio side. Last but not least is the awesome Webull portfolio. We're only down 47% at this point. Still rocketing. If we go back to the sheet, we can see here that we're actually up for the week at 28%, which is wild. Really happy about that. If we actually take a look at the Webull portfolio here, you can see just how crazy it's been. Now, just to be clear, these numbers have just been since May 19th, where I had obviously the super unfortunate thing of holding this since literally almost a year. I think a year ago, actually, at this point. I think it was like around a year ago. I might be able to see that. Anyhow, I'll look into that later, but I'm pretty sure I've been holding this for just over a year, which is the problem, right? So I should have realized sooner, and I think I can actually see that here. Yeah, I guess. So I've been holding this just about a year. I think, in about 2 days. And you can see how it performed. So it was like it started going up a little bit, down a little bit, and then it just took a dump um, in January. It went down all the way down like $700, and then it went up here during February, where we were only, I think, at a loss of like, um, oh, according to this, sorry, I was looking at the wrong number. Yeah, $7 lost, and then it went down all the way here, where it was like $600 lost, then 700. But in the middle of February, or the end of February, we're actually up. I should have probably just taken that as a signal to get out, but I didn't. I was just holding on to this dream that, the cyclical thing I was talking about, which I still believe in because I think that's happening right now. If you look at BTC, it's like at 85K or something. And then yeah, it's been down, down, down. So we've been at 1,000, but it's slowly climbing up, which is nice. If we take a look at BTC here, you can see that's at 87K. So, and the nice thing is if you compare in the last 6 months, BTC it is down 21%, where if you look at MSTR and look at 6 months, it's down 53%. So that's why this fund has done so good. So anyhow, guys, that is it from me. And as always, I wish you guys a wealthy future.